There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from a lifetime of trying to be perfect, and you may know it well. The endless self-correction, the war against every flaw, the feeling that you are never quite clean enough, never good enough, that there is always one more dark spot to scrub out before you can finally rest. People spend their whole lives in this fight, certain that the goal of all inner work is to become flawless, to eliminate the bad in them entirely, to arrive at last at a self with no shadow in it. Tonight, I am going to tell you that this goal is a mistake, that it cannot be reached, and that the reaching for it is making people sicker, not better. The aim was never perfection. The aim was always wholeness, and the two are not the same. They are nearly opposite. Wholeness and the two are not the same. They are nearly opposite. Look at the difference closely, because everything turns on it. Perfection wants to remove. It looks at the self and sees parts to be cut away, the weak, the dark, the unworthy, until only the clean and the high remain. It is a process of subtraction, an endless amputation in the name of an ideal. Wholeness wants the opposite. It wants to include. It looks at the self and sees parts that have been exiled, cast out, denied, and it works to bring them home, to gather the whole of a person into one, the high and the low, the light and the dark, the worthy and the parts he is ashamed of. Perfection makes you smaller and smaller, cutting away everything that does not fit the ideal. Wholeness makes you larger, taking back everything you had thrown away. And the part you most need to take back is almost always the part you most despise. In every person there is a weakest, most embarrassing, least developed side, the function he is worst at, the corner of himself he has hidden because it shames him next to his strengths. The perfectionist wants to amputate this inferior side entirely and live only by his best. But it is precisely this despised fourth part, the clumsy and inferior thing, that holds the door to wholeness, because it is the part still connected to the depths, still humble, still able to receive. A person made only of his polished strengths is brilliant and hollow. It is the weak place, the unfinished corner, the side he cannot master, that keeps him human and open and able to grow. Wholeness comes in through the very door. Perfection tries to brick up. And here is the thing the perfectionist cannot bear to hear. You cannot have light without shadow. This is not a moral failing in the design of the world. It is the structure of reality itself. A light that casts no shadow is no light at all. It is a flat, blank glare. Every real thing that stands in the sun throws a shadow behind it, and the brighter the light, the sharper the dark. A human being is the same. The very intensity that makes a person capable of great good is the same intensity that, turned the other way, is capable of great harm. You cannot keep the one and delete the other, because they are the same energy seen from two sides. To demand a self of pure light with no shadow is to demand something that has never existed and never could, and the demand itself becomes a kind of torture. And it is a torture with no possible end, which is its special cruelty. The perfectionist has installed inside himself a tyrant who can never be satisfied, because the moment one flaw is conquered, the I simply moves to the next, and there is always a next. He lives under a permanent verdict of not yet good enough, handed down by a judge that is himself. He calls this self-discipline and imagines it makes him better, but watch what it actually produces. Anxiety that never rests. A harshness toward himself that slowly becomes a harshness toward everyone else. And, underneath, a buried exhaustion, the deep tiredness of a person who has never once been allowed to simply be what he is. The pursuit of a flawless self does not produce a fine human being. It produces a frightened one, forever bracing against his own judgment. This is why the wisest of the old traditions spoke of the happy fault, the fortunate failing, the flaw without which the whole story could not have turned toward its good end. They understood something the perfectionist refuses, that the fall, the error, the dark thread in the weave was not simply a disaster to be regretted, but was, in some deep way, necessary, the very thing that made the higher outcome possible. There is no redemption without something to redeem. There is no depth in a person who has never gone wrong. The flaw you are most ashamed of, the failing you would give anything to erase, may be the exact place where your wholeness has to be built, because a wholeness that excluded it would not be whole at all. This is the deep wisdom hidden in that old phrase about the fortunate fall. It is not a celebration of wrongdoing. It is a recognition that the dark thread is woven into the good outcome so tightly that you cannot pull it out without unraveling the whole cloth. The person who has never failed has never had anything to integrate, never been forced down into his own depths, never learned mercy because he never needed it. The flaw is what cracks the smooth shell of a person and lets the depth in. A life with no fall stays shallow, however correct it looks from outside. The descent that the failing forces upon you is the very thing that makes a soul deep enough to hold anything real. The fault is fortunate because without it, you would have stayed on the surface of yourself forever. Consider the thorn in the flesh that the old letter writer spoke of, the weakness he begged to have taken from him and was not granted. He wanted it gone. He wanted to be clean of it, free of it, perfect without it. And the answer he received was that the thorn would stay, that his strength would be made complete precisely in his weakness, not in spite of it, but through it. This is the whole teaching in a single image. The thing you want removed is not always meant to be removed. Sometimes it is the thorn that keeps you human, that keeps you humble, that keeps you in need and therefore in contact with something larger than your own will. A man with no thorn, no flaw, no weakness would not be perfect. He would be unbearable, and he would be alone. Think honestly about the people who have actually helped you in your life, the ones whose presence eased something in you. They were almost never the flawless ones. The truly perfect person, if such a thing existed, would be impossible to be near, because his completeness would leave no room for yours. His having no needs would meet none of yours. His having no weakness would make your own weakness unforgivable beside him. It is precisely through our flaws that we reach one another. The crack in a person is where another person gets in. The need is what lets love have something to do. A being with no thorn, no failing, no soft, unfinished place would shine like a cold star and warm. No one. We are bound to each other not by our perfections, but by the honest places where we are still incomplete. If you have spent your life at war with your own flaws, certain that you must defeat them before you can be whole, stay with me and subscribe, because this next part is the turn that ends the war. Now I have to set down a hard guard, because this is the exact point where a careless listener can take my words and turn them into poison. To say that wholeness includes the shadow is not to say that anything goes. It is not permission to be cruel, to act out your worst, to harm others and call it integration. That is the opposite of what I mean, and the confusion is dangerous. To integrate the shadow is to know it, to own it, to take responsibility for it, so that it stops ruling you from the dark. It is precisely the person who refuses to know his shadow who acts it out, who does harm while believing himself good, who becomes the very thing he denies. Knowing your darkness is what gives you a choice about it. The aim is not to indulge the shadow, but to stop being unconsciously driven by it, and those are entirely different things. Wholeness asks you to face your capacity for harm exactly so that you do not inflict it. And there is a second guard, just as important, pointed the other way. To stop demanding perfection is not to stop caring how you live, not to collapse into a careless contempt for goodness. It is to change the means by which you become good. The perfectionist tries to become good by hating and beating the bad in himself, and it does not work. It only drives the bad deeper and makes it stronger in the dark. Wholeness offers a different and gentler road to the same goodness. You become better, not by waging war on yourself, but by knowing yourself completely, by bringing the exiled parts into the light where they can be understood and slowly transformed. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. The thing you hate in yourself grows under your hatred. The thing you face with honesty and a measure of mercy is the only thing that ever actually changes. So the practice is not what the perfectionist thinks. You do not improve by standing over your faults with a whip, naming them, hating them, vowing to destroy them because the whip only drives them deeper and feeds them in the dark. You improve by turning toward the disowned part with honest attention and a measure of mercy, asking what it is, what it needs, what wound it is guarding, what energy it carries that you have badly needed. Met that way, the very thing you were at war with begins, slowly, to change its nature because it is no longer fighting for its life against your hatred. The shadow softens when it is finally seen. The exiled part comes home when it is finally welcomed. And notice what you recover when it does. The force you spent years spending on the war against yourself, the energy locked up in holding half of you down, is suddenly free, returned to you, available at last for living instead of for self-suppression. That is the hidden cost of the long fight against your own darkness. It does not only fail to make you better, it ties up the very strength your life was waiting for. This is the gentle and unglamorous mechanism of all real inner change, and it looks nothing like the war the perfectionist has been waging on himself for years. I once said, and I meant it with my whole understanding, that I would rather be whole than good. People are sometimes shocked by that, and I understand why. But hear what it means. The merely good man, the one who has achieved his goodness by exiling half of himself, by cutting away everything dark and pretending it is gone, has not become good at all. He has only become divided, and the half he exiled waits in the dark, growing, until one day it takes its revenge, and the good man does something that astonishes everyone, most of all himself. The whole man is safer than the merely good one because he has nothing hidden in the dark plotting against his light. History is full of the wreckage the merely good leave behind, the upright people whose exiled darkness erupted at last in cruelty they could not believe was theirs, the righteous who did terrible things in the certainty that they were serving the good. None of them set out to do harm. That is the whole horror of it. They had simply put their own capacity for harm so far out of sight that, when it acted without their knowledge and against their will, wearing the mask of their virtue. The whole person is protected against exactly this. He has met his own darkness, knows its face, feels it when it stirs, and so it cannot seize him from behind. He may not be cleaner than the merely good man, but he is far less dangerous to himself and to everyone near him, because nothing in him is hidden and starving and waiting for its hour. He knows his own capacity for harm and has made his peace with knowing it, and so it does not erupt out of him unawares. Wholeness is not lower than goodness. It is the only sound foundation goodness can stand on. Carry this into your ordinary days, because that is where it has to live. The next time you catch yourself in the old war, the harsh inner verdict, the scrambling to scrub out one more flaw, stop and ask a different question. Not how do I get rid of this part of me, but what would it mean to know this part, to own it, to bring it into the whole. You will find the war loosening its grip and something steadier taking its place, the quiet strength of a person who is no longer divided against himself. That steadiness is worth more than any flawless surface you could ever have polished. It is the difference between a goodness that is forever defending itself against the dark within, and a goodness that has made its peace with the whole of a human being and therefore cannot be ambushed from inside. So lay down the impossible war. You were never meant to become a flawless thing with no dark in it, and the trying has cost you years of peace. The shadow is not going to be deleted, and the good news, the news the perfectionist can never hear, is that it does not need to be. It needs to be known. The flaw is not always to be removed. Sometimes it is to be understood, owned, and woven into a self large enough to contain it. The goal of all this inner work, the spark you free and the depths you descend into and the images you meet, is not to make you perfect. It is to make you whole, which means to make you complete, the entire person, light and dark together, at peace within yourself at last, because nothing in you is exiled and waiting in the dark. In the comments, mark that you are choosing the larger road. Write 3 words: whole, not perfect. And come with me to the next one, because sometimes to a person who has done this work long enough, the soul grants a glimpse of what the whole was always building toward. A single image rises unbidden of an order so vast and so harmonious that it leaves the one who sees it change forever, certain for one moment that everything fits. There was such a vision in the long series of dreams I followed, and it is one of the most extraordinary things I have ever recorded. The world clock is where we go next.